Commercial and investment properties number 2, or actually my favorite chapter of the course. First off, since it's the 20th chapter, it's the last chapter. So some of you who've taken, the courses regularly, again, you're close to being finished. All right. The other reason I like this chapter is because today we're going to play a game. And I put the name of that game on the board, and you may have heard of it before. It is called Deal or No Deal. So again, we're talking about investment properties. And what are we looking for with an investment property? Profit. So we want to see that it is a deal. If it's not a deal, do I want to buy that property? No, not at all. So again, this is what we're going to be delving in today with this chapter. So let's look at some of the things, of course, about investment properties. And of course, the primary goal with investment properties is the preservation of the capital invested. In other words, I have $100,000 that I want to invest in real estate. And I want to preserve that money. So I'm going to purchase a property and put my $100,000 into that. I mean, truthfully, if I just wanted to blow the money, I could go down to Atlantic City or out to Las Vegas with the money, put it on a table game, and in 5 minutes, my money is gone, right? So again, I want to preserve my capital. I want to make my capital work for me. And that's why we look for investment real estate. Very important. Now, there are some other important characteristics that investing in real estate bring us that certain other investments do not. First, of course, we want to preserve the capital. The second one, we want to receive a continuing stream of income, right? If I have an apartment building or an office building that I own, hopefully what am I getting at the beginning of every month? Rent. So a continuing stream of income coming in. The other thing, the property creates for me a tax shelter, which gives me certain income advantages, such as deductions for property taxes, mortgage interests, and even depreciation. Then, of course, I want my building to grow in value, right? Over years, I want the equity to build in my property, because that's making my investment grow. And eventually, I want my return on my investment. I want to cash out. I want to realize my yield on my investment. So again, this is why people look at real estate as an investment vehicle, because you can actually take advantage of all 5 of these principles. There are very few other investments that do have all 5 of these things working together. Now, unfortunately, can I just invest blindly? No. Because remember, in anything we do, guys, there is inherited risk. Anything we do, there are certain kind of risks. So, what we have to do as an investor, we have to go in with our eyes open. We have to understand, and if there is risk, try to mitigate or reduce that risk to a comfortable level so that we, as an investor, are okay with that investment. So, we can view risk as a degree or probability the actual rate of return earned will differ from the return expected when the investment was made. Now, the amount of expected profit, remember, is directly related to a risk. So if I'm taking more of a risk, what is my expected profit? A lot higher. If I'm taking less risk, well, my profit is going to be expected to be lower. Now, there are lots of different types of risks we have to look at. And because investors have many outlets for investing their money, real estate must compete with alternative investments. For instance, stocks and bonds, even a regular savings account, right? I could take my $100,000 and I can put it in a Chase Manhattan savings account. Is it safe? Yeah, it's pretty safe. Am I making a lot of money on my savings account there? No. So I have little risk, and how much return? None. All right? So again, are there huge risks? Yeah, I mean, let's say I'm risking all my money on a stock, on a potential brand new company I have no knowledge about, right? That's supposed to have the new cure of something. Again, unless I've done my research, my homework, I may be risking a lot, you know? I mean, a lot of people kick themselves because they should have invested in Amazon and Google when they first came out, right? They say people who invested in Amazon and Google when they first came out are worth multi-million dollars today. But who knew, right? Back then, truthfully, all right? So again, we have to look at this risk versus reward. Now, in real estate, we have certain specific risks we have to look at. The first one is what we call space market risk. This is the risk that demand for space will affect rents, vacancies, and even net operating income. So, if there's very low or no vacancies, what happens to rent levels? They go up. And if there are a lot of empty apartments or stores, what happens to rent levels? They go down. So we have to understand that. Then we have capital market risk. This is a risk that changes in the market for capital will affect the value of real estate. So let's go back a little bit in time to a wonderful period of 2001 to 2008, which I love to refer to as the heyday of real estate. Well, was it very easy or very hard to get financing in those years? Easy. Very, very easy. You know, we used to tease that the lenders would use the mirror test to qualify people. You know what the mirror test is? You take a little cosmetic-sized mirror, put it under the person's nose. If it fogs up, that means they're alive, and we can give them a loan, right? So again, very, very easy. Now, what happened to the value of real estate during that period? The value of real estate shot up dramatically. And then what happened in 2009 and 2010? The collapse, and banks constricted, right? They weren't lending. And what happened to values? It went down. So again, this is a pure indicator of capital market risk. You know, when the banks were lending, throwing money at everybody, good times, you know, and values went up. When they constricted, values came down. So again, these are things as investors we also have to watch. Also, the next one, financial risk. This is when debt is used to finance an investment property. An investor's return on investment increases if the leverage of credit is used to enhance that property. So again, I can have two different kinds of leverages, remember? I can have positive leverage or I can have negative leverage. And remember, which one do I want? Positive. I want to be making money. So we have to look at things. Now, other types of risk. For example, environmental risk, new laws, rules and regulations that come into play that we have to deal with certain things. Legislative risks. For example, here in New York, what happened in June? You guys remember? A whole new group of rent stabilization laws were passed. What did this do, or what did this turn to do for some investors? They panicked. They don't know what to do, how the new laws will affect them. So again, we have to watch these things when we're investing in properties. And of course, even management risk. You know, because again, if I have a larger property, do I want to manage it myself? No. Not really. But I'm going to have to be careful, because a good manager will keep my property running smoothly and keep it making money. But if I have a bad manager, I might actually start losing money. So these are other types of risks I, as an investor, have to understand and appreciate when I'm getting involved with investment real estate. Now, the next one is probably the most downside that investing in real estate has, and it's liquidity. And liquidity is the ability to convert an asset into cash quickly without the loss of principal. So, I have that $100,000 in my savings account. When can I get it? Anytime I want. Go to the ATM, walk into the bank, whatever, I can pull out how much I need. Now, however, I've invested $100,000 into a building. I need that $100,000 back for another investment. When can I get that money out of my property? Well, it may take some time, right? If I want to sell the property, it may take me months till I sell the property. Even if I want to finance the property. If I walk into the bank today and say, "Hi, I have my building, give me money," will they just hand me a check? No. There's a whole process. I have to file an application. They're going to do an appraisal, a title report. They're going to review everything. It's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks until we get all that done. So if any downside to investing in real estate, the downside is liquidity, the ability to pull my cash quickly back from my property. Now, back to leverage for a moment. Now, remember, leverage is the effect borrowed funds have on investment returns. Leverage may increase or decrease the investor's return that would otherwise have been received had they purchased property on an all-cash basis. Remember, when we're talking leverage, guys, we are talking the use of OPM, otherwise known as other people's money. Now, that could be money from a friend, right? I could borrow money from a friend to invest in real estate. It could be from a bank, a private lender, various different ways. But I'm using other people's money instead of taking my own money to try to benefit, okay? Now, remember, leverage can be either positive or negative. Now, positive leverage is when the funds are invested at a rate of return higher than the cost of the funds that are borrowed. So that means I borrow money at, let's say, 4%, but I'm making 6% on my investment. So I have a net positive of 2%, so I'm still making money, right? But negative leverage is when I borrow money and the rate of borrow is higher than my rate of return. So let's say I'm now borrowing that money at 4% again, and this time I'm only making 2%. So what do I have to do every month? Come out of pocket, right? I got to pay. Now, as investors, which do we want to do? Positive leverage or negative? Positive. Now, is there any time I will accept negative leverage? And the answer is yes, especially in times when I'm doing construction, right? Because if I'm doing a rehab project where I bought a property and I'm rehabbing it, I'm fixing it up, unfortunately, will there be tenants in that property?
No.
Am I making money? No. So all I'm doing is paying every month until that property is fixed up, and now we can get tenants in. So I will accept it, but remember, we have to understand it and plan for it. In other words, how many months am I going to have negative leverage? Is it 2, 3, 4? Do I have the capital to take care of the expenses during that time? So I got to make sure, if I am going to accept negative leverage, I understand it and deal with it. Otherwise, what could happen? I can end up losing everything. Very important, guys. Right? Now, Case in point, this is actually a very important point. Here's a simple example of positive leverage. Will buys a retail property for $150,000. He puts $40,000 down and finances the remaining at $110,000 at a 6% interest rate. A year later, he's earned $12,000 in income from rent. Now, without taking into account any tax advantages he may have gained by owning this property, and after subtracting interest paid on a loan, let's say $6,000, his net profit is $6,000 for a 15% return on investment. So let's look at that. So he's earned $6,000, or what I like to say, money in or money made, and he spent $40,000, the down payment, divided by the $40,000 equals 0.15 or 15%. Now, let's look at if we decided to pay all cash. So this time we have no mortgage, so the whole rental income is mine. So now I have $12,000 of income, but I'm dividing it by the full 150. So now it's 0.08 or 8%. Which is greater, 8 or 15? 15. Which would I rather make? 8% on my money or 15% on my money? 15. Now, I'm going to take it a step further. In the first example, he only used 40,000 of his 150. How much does he have left? 110. What can he now do with that money? He can find similar properties and invest. So if he's smart and diligent, he can actually find maybe 2 or 3 other properties, and now instead of one property making 8%, he now has 3 or 4 making 15%. See, a prudent investor is always looking to leverage themselves correctly. All right? Now, how do we know if we have a good investment? Well, we have to evaluate it. All right? Again, it's all about doing our due diligence, guys. It's all about doing our homework, our paperwork, so to speak. And whenever we're buying investment properties, we have to know what we're getting ourselves into. Otherwise, we'll lose our shirts, truthfully. So, a couple things we want to understand. We want to look at the purchase, but remember, there's a big difference in buying investment real estate versus if I'm buying my home. When I buy my home, I'm looking for things to live in, right? So it becomes an emotional purchase. You know, you look at the kitchen. Is that the kitchen you can envision cooking Thanksgiving dinner in? If it is, then that's the home you want. Can you see celebrating holidays in the living room or the dining room? Are the bedrooms comfortable? Is there a wonderful backyard, maybe for a swing set for the kids? These are all the emotional ties that I have when I buy a residential property. With an investor, do they think with their heart? No, they think with their head. I like to say it's all about dollars and cents. Oops. And look at the way I spelled the word sense. It's got to make sense, guys. Otherwise, why are you buying that property? If you're not going to make a good enough return for yourself, what should you do? Don't buy it. Go on to the next. Find a new property. All right? Because this is your investment. All right? So we're going to look at that property, and we're going to try to measure it. We're going to try to see how we can derive whether it's a good investment or a not so good investment for us. So the first thing is we look at the cash flow model. In other words, how much monthly, biannually, yearly income is coming from that property? And is that suitable for me? How much do I need to earn extra a month? $1,000? $2,000? $10,000? That's what I have to figure out. The other thing is we are also going to prepare what we call a pro forma, or an annual property operating data sheet. What I'm going to do is do a hypothetical projection of income and expense for my first full year of ownership. In other words, I'm projecting into the future about what kind of income and what kind of expenses I'm achieving from my property from my actual very first year of ownership. Okay? Now, in order to prepare the pro forma, I'm going to need to get some data. So some of the data about that property is historical information and trends, current supply and demand, any factors affecting such trends, and even anticipated events such as completion from other developments under construction. Now, we have to make sure if there are anticipated events that these things are going to happen. Case in point, what happened in Long Island City not too long ago? Who was supposed to come to Long Island City? Amazon. And what did a lot of investors do? They bought property. They were actually, even some of them, paying premiums to buy property in Long Island City. And then what happened? They didn't buy. They didn't move in. And what happened to all these investors? They lost money. Matter of fact, I remember reading in the newspaper that some of the investors wanted to form a class action lawsuit against Amazon for not moving into Long Island City. Now, can I sue someone because they decided not to move someplace? No. That's their decision, you know? So again, it may be something that's anticipated, but sometimes, guys, you have to make sure that something is really happening before you make a commitment, all right? So these things do affect them. Now, most investors do start by requesting a copy of the present owner's recent tax returns and or what we call their operating statements, which are used by property owners to illustrate the total revenue generated and all the expenses for a given period as a means of evaluating the property's performance. So, let's look at an example here. So we have a property that has 9 apartments at $520 a month, 8 apartments at $610 a month, for a total anticipated annual rent roll of $114,720. But is that realistic? Because that's saying that all the apartments are rented 100% of the time, 365 days a year. Is that realistic? No. We're going to have tenants coming and going. We're going to have vacancies here and there. So we have to actually look at the true gross income, what's really coming in. So, find out that the annual rent roll of $114,720 is really, truly $111,320. So that is what we call our gross income. Then we look at additional income that the property may generate. In the case here, this property has a laundry room in the basement, point up or whatever, and it's bringing in $2,400. Now again, we may be renting parking spaces, maybe a media room, all different kind of things that bring income to the property. All right. So we look at now our total, or our AGI, adjusted gross income, which is $113,720. Then, unfortunately, do we get to keep all that money?
No.
Why not? Expense? You people are mean. I gotta spend money? Unfortunately, yes. What is one of the biggest expenses you deal with in real estate? Taxes, right? Taxes. 2 things in life we can't get away from, guys. Death and taxes. And we have to pay our property taxes. Probably the next biggest expense is, of course, our insurance. which we need on our property. And then we look at some of the other expenses included in this property here. Well, there's an owner's salary of $20,000, mortgage interest of $25,806. The owner has a health insurance of $48.50, travel and entertainment of $2,025, repairs and maintenance $42.37, counting legal, advertising, electric, water, snow removal, all this fun stuff, and it rolls down to the total expenses of $109,062. Wow, that's a lot of expenses. So we look at our total operating income of $113,720. We minus out our total expenses of $109,062, and we are left with our earnings before taxes of $4,658. That's less than $500 a month. Is that a deal? No. I mean, we spent all this money on this property to make $4,600? Really? Now, this is why it's important. Yep.
Where did they come up with this depreciation?
Oh, don't worry, we'll get into that.
my
Oh,
question.
you saw that.
Yeah,
That's fine. We're going to get into depreciation in a little bit. But good. Hold that question for a moment.
Okay.
Now, one of the things we have to do as a new owner is I have to evaluate this investment. Now, do I need all the expenses of the current owner? Well, for instance, the current owner is paying a health insurance policy from this building. If I have a health insurance policy, do I need to pay for two? No. Because one health insurance policy is good enough, right? So I can look at that, and that will not be an expense for me because I have health insurance. So that is what we call an add back. In other words, that money that's being shown by the current owner as an expense is really not an expense to me because I don't need it. So I can throw that in, and now $4,658 plus $4,850, now I'm almost at $10,000 of income. Is the property starting to look a little better? Yeah. So this is what I have to do. As an investor, I have to play a little bit of hypothetical what-ifs. I have to look at these expenses and rationalize them. Say, do they make sense? But more importantly, do they fit me and my plan for this building? Where else can I gain money? Well, travel, entertainment, things like that. So I'm going to look at these expenses and see which I really need. Unfortunately, can I get rid of real estate taxes? No. That one we can't get. Can I get rid of the insurance? No. So again, certain things are going to have to stay, but others are a little bit more flexible. Now, besides the expenses, where else could I look to possibly gain income? Raise the rents, right? One of the important things I might want to look at is what the current owner is charging the tenants to see if they are what we call market rents. What if they're below market? What can I do? I can raise them. Now, again, can I raise them immediately? No, because remember, the tenants have leases. So I may have to wait till the leases expire and bump them up a little bit. Now, remember, I don't have to clobber the poor tenants. I don't have to hit them with a $500 a month increase. But remember this, if I have 17 tenants and I raise each tenant $50 a month, how much money is that to me? How much? $350 extra a month. And it's increasing my bottom line. So those little tiny increases for each individual tenant brings me more capital. So that's what I have to look at as an investor. So let's flip the page. So adjusting for the pro forma. Now, by reviewing the operating statement, the investor now develops a good understanding of the financial requirements for owning this property. But we should not rely solely on the data that they are providing, because we can change things. So certain things I'm going to look at is maybe adding a new line item, something that I see that should be an expense that the current owner isn't taking. Like one of the things is there's no reserve, right? I may want to create a reserve account for a possible capital improvement down the future. I may want to swirl $100 a month from the income and put it aside so that if a repair or anything comes up in the future, I have that money saved. I don't have to come and pull money out of my pocket, all right? Other things, I may use some items, but adjust them. And again, I may omit some things that aren't relevant to me, like that health insurance policy. I don't need two. I can't go to the doctor's office and say, which one gives me more money, right? It won't work, all right, at some point. So certain things like the owner's salary. Again, there was $20,000 in an owner's salary. I may not need that income, personally. Again, travel and entertainment, like we said, any car-related expense, debt service, and even depreciation. Those are all factors that are in that expenses that now I have to take out, especially the debt service. If I have no mortgage, if I buy that building all cash, is there any debt service? Am I paying a mortgage? No. So again, I have to play this what-if game, this hypothetical, to see, does this investment make sense to me as a new owner? Now, then going back to the income, I have to check that gross potential total income. This is both cash and non-cash received from my investment. And again, this may also be referred to as gross revenue. Now again, property owner is going to give me all those leases, and I'm going to see all what we call the contract rents that are currently in the leases. But I want to know, is there a potential to increase the rents or not? Now, one of the tools that we use, guys, is a website called rentometer.com. Okay? And it's a really good website. What it allows you to do is put in the address of a property and then choose the type of apartment, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. Put in a rental amount. And it's cute. It's got like a little tachometer, speedometer thing on it. With the
property, and what do you do?
Huh?
You put the address of the property.
Address of the property, the type of bedroom. A 1 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, a 3 bedroom, whatever it is. And we put the amount of rent. And then it has a little speedometer thing that will show whether our rent is too low for the area, right on target, or too darn high. So again, it gives us feedback in real time about that area, that neighborhood, that section, about how our rent compares with all the other rents in the area. And if I'm too low, what should I do? Raise the rents, definitely. So again, these are things we have to look at. This is a huge tool when we're looking at determining levels of rental. Okay?
Does it cost you money to use it? How does it work?
No.
And this is for everywhere, not just New York?
Exactly. You see, I like this site because it is for the entire country. So it doesn't matter whether I'm in New York City, Nassau County, Schenectady, or Las Vegas. You know, it doesn't matter. You can check rents from wherever. So yeah, it's a good, very important tool. All right. So again, if possible, I'm now looking at the market rent. In other words, the rent on that lease, versus the economic rent. What is the actual rent levels in the neighborhood? Because, what I want to do is, truthfully, I want to keep my rent as close to as what we call the market or the economic rent as possible. Because if the rent is too high, what's going to happen?
Vacancy.
Vacancies. People will leave. They don't want to live there, right? Because they'll find cheaper spaces.
So is the market rent a lot?
Market or economic rent. So again, if it's too high, people are going to leave. If it's too low, what's the problem with that?
Something wrong.
Well, no, I'm not covering my expenses, right? I'm not making money. Very important. So this is where it becomes a very tricky balancing act, guys. We can't be too high, and the same token, we can't be too low. So that's why tools like this are so important, because we can check an area to get a good gauge as what is that market rent. So this way we're not too high, we're not too low, we're right in the middle. Remember, it was like the little bears with Goldilocks with the 3 beds. The one bed too hard, not good. The one bed too soft, not good. We want the bed that's just right. All right? So again, very important. All right? Now, in market rents is different from contract rent. The adjustment could be made on the pro forma. However, if the tenants in the property have longer term leases, maybe 3-year, 5-year, 10-year leases, again, we're going to have to think how we can deal with those leases. Because if a tenant has a 10-year lease and they have 7 years left, unfortunately, I'm stuck with that tenant for the next 7 years. And if that rent is too low or it's not market level, unfortunately, I have to bite the bullet for the next 7 years. So again, we have to deal with it. Now, another important thing we have to understand is vacancy and collection losses. Like I said, as much as we would love to dream and have that apartment building filled 365 days a year, unfortunately, that's not reality. Unfortunately, tenants come, tenants go, and even sometimes tenants don't pay the rent. So we have to understand what we call a vacancy factor in the area we're doing business. Now, here in New York, NYC, our vacancy factor is typically 5% of the gross income. That's what we factor in as a vacancy factor. Now, let's say I go up to Albany, New York. Can I use 5%? No. Albany might be closer, maybe 9 or 10%. So one of the things I have to do is I have to find out the vacancy factor of the area that I'm getting into. Now, who can I get this information from? Who do you think? Well, an easy person to find this out from would be a reputable local appraiser. Contact them, talk to them, and say, hi, I'm an investor coming into your area. I'm looking to buy property. Could you help me out? I have one quick question for you. What's the vacancy factor in Buffalo, New York? And that appraiser will readily furnish that information. One, of course, he's being nice to you. Why? He wants your business. He's hoping that you'll come to him, maybe order a few appraisals and things of that nature. And by furnishing you that information, he feels he's helping you, and you'll come back to him should you do a deal. So again, that's an important person to work with in our sphere of influence. So he'll be able to look at historical data, projections, and even the market analysis, again, to gauge what those things.
You guys go to whatever appraiser?
Usually a general appraiser in the area, in the neighborhood. Those are fine.
And how do you find that appraiser?
It's called the wonderful tool we have today, Google. Right? Google. Buffalo, New York appraiser. Very easy.
You could probably Google percentage you know.
You could-
can
you
sometimes
could
do
probably-
in this neighborhood and it'll probably come up.
It'll probably come up. But do I trust the internet for everything?
No.
No. That's like my favorite commercial about the internet. It's about, I forgot which dating site. And the two girls are talking, they're comparing the two dating sites, and the one girl goes, "Oh, I have this wonderful date with this French gentleman." And this big burly guy comes walking up, doesn't look a lick of France, and he goes, "Bonjour." And again, don't believe everything you see on the internet. Right? Again, trust the professionals. They know what they're doing. All right? Now, and the next thing we have to figure out on our property is our miscellaneous income. In other words, how much additional income or how many other things can we add to our property to bring in income? I was working with a client of mine who was actually in the process of picking up a 6-family building. And he was saying, well, how else, what other things can I add to this building to make money? And we went down into the basement, and aside from the boiler and the hot water heater, the basement was open and empty. And right away, I said 2 things you can put in this basement: a laundry room, coin op, and storage cages. In other words, little metal cages for each of the tenants, maybe 5 by 10, something like that. Charge them $50 a month. Takes you maybe a day to put those containers together, and now you're making $50 a month times 6. That's $300 extra a month. And do I have to maintain those storage cages? No, there's nothing to do with them. So if I make money and don't have to spend money, is that a good thing?
That's right.
You betcha. All right. So again, we have to sometimes look. A lot of some of the new buildings in Manhattan have these huge media rooms where they rent them out, especially on a day like Sunday, which was Super Bowl Sunday, with the 72-inch screen TV. And on Super Bowl Sunday, they'll rent that media room out to you for $2,000 so that you and 10 of your best friends can sit there and watch the Super Bowl on that 72-inch screen TV. So a lot of buildings have these things. Spas, gyms, you know, different things like that. So again, sometimes you have to look at the building and say, what additional services can I, as a potential investor, add that, of course, first off, the tenants are going to use, and that's going to bring in additional income to the property. Now, once we have the gross potential minus the vacancy factor and this additional income, we now have our effective gross income. This is our new effective gross income. So we're starting to look better. Then, of course, we have to deal with our expenses. Unfortunately, we have them. We have 2 different types of main expenses. The first ones are our fixed expenses. These are expenses that are there and are never going to change. Like the biggest, taxes, right? And insurance and any other fixed expense. Then we have to look at and try to anticipate our variable expenses. What are those? Well, repairs on the building, right? Can I tell that the tenant in apartment 2D is going to have a pipe break under her sink? Can I tell that? If anyone happens to have a crystal ball that you can foretell the future, please see me after class, because I think the lotto jackpot, the Mega Millions, is what is it up to? 350, 450, somewhere around there, something like that. But again, we can't foretell the future. Even certain things like here we live in New York, what do we have to deal with sometimes in the wintertime? Snow and snow removal. Because if we're a big building and we don't remove our snow in a few hours, what's going to happen?
You're gonna find people.
A fine. We're going to get a ticket. So does that snow go away on its own?
No.
No, I have to hire someone to remove it. Knock on wood, and thank you to my back. This year we have not had that much snow. So my back is in good shape. All right? So again, these are our variable expenses because we don't know. We could have a heavy snow year, right? We've had snow where you wake up the next day and the snow's up, 3 feet. You can barely open your front door. 2 years like this where we've had little dustings on and off. So again, these are our variable expenses we have to understand. Now, next thing, of course, is our reserves for replacements. As a new owner, I want to squirrel some money away because will there be unforeseen expenses? Unfortunately, yes. So I'd rather be prepared to deal with that now than get some kind of surprise down the road. So once I have my gross income, my vacancy factor, all my expenses, the last fund number after everything is my net operating income, or my NOI. This is the annual income from the property or business that remains after the annual operating income, all the operating costs are paid. The NOI is calculated by deducting operating expenses from the effective gross income. Now, because the property has value, independent of any financing an investor might obtain to acquire it, the net operating income does not take into consideration any expenses associated with financing. So I look at my net operating income prior to making my mortgage payments. Because truthfully, what our investors do look at is the net operating income as being the indicator of real value or worth of the investment. In other words, that's really how much money my property is going to make. And that's really what's telling me, as an investor, how much this property is really worth to me. Is it a good investment? Am I making a lot of money? Is it not that good investment? Am I making a little money? But this is the most important number I, as an investor, am looking at. Now, something for the exams, and again for your math, guys, this is one of the things that pop up, and it's called the capitalization rate. Now, you might hear the term cap rate, CAP rate, same thing. Now, this is used to estimate the present value of future income. The rate is essentially equal to the rate of return the investor would expect to earn in a real estate investment. Since the cap rate for real estate investment is not guaranteed, an investor will expect a larger rate of return than he or she can get for safer investments. Now, the cap rate calculation is what we call an IRV formula and relies on 3 variables. The first one, I, is income. The second, rate. That's the rate of return that I, the investor, want to get. And the third one, V, is my value of my property. So if I know any 3 of these, I can then find out the third. And again, this is where most investors use the cap rate to truly determine how much that property is really, truly worth to them. So, when we have any 2 factors, it's possible to calculate the third. So if we know income and rate, we take the income divided by the rate, and we now have the value. If we know the income and value, we take the income divided by the value, and now we have the rate. If we know the rate and value, we do the rate times value, and that should be the income. Now again, sometimes investors will use this calculation to determine if that income that they're getting, the rate that they want, more importantly, the value or the purchase price of the property. So that's why some investors use this. They see the income, they know their rate of return that they want to achieve. How much am I then going to offer to buy this property? So, an example here. When creating pro forma, the investor revised the numbers from the operating statement by raising rents, adjusting expenses to arrive at a net operating income of $50,690. If they want to see an 8% cap rate, he would theoretically be willing to pay $633,625 to purchase the property. Now, what if I was willing to reduce my cap rate, lower my cap rate from 8% to 7%? What happens to the amount of money I would offer? It actually goes up. The cap rate turns out to be an inverse ratio. So the lower return I want, the higher value I can offer. And again, a lot of times investors will use this to try to find a good price to offer on that property. Now, of course, other things are going to factor in. The real estate mantra, again, location, location, location. Depending on where a property sits, is going to have an important factor, of course, in its value. The second thing, what's going on with the economy, especially in a particular area. Is the economy booming and growing in that area? Is it stagnant? Or is it depressed? Is it falling down? And of course, the current interest rates. What's happening with interest rates? Are they going up? Are they going down? Or are they stable? So these are things we have to look at as an investor. So again, I'm going to play a what-if game when preparing this pro forma. What if I finance at 6%? What if I put $150 down? What if I cut the expenses? And I'm going to play with these things to understand whether or not this is a deal for me. Now, on the next page, what I've done is I've played with my pro forma here, and I've came up with certain things. So, we've changed the income on the property. We've actually raised the rentals on the property. Again, not by much, a little bit, but now I have a gross potential income of $125,460. So just by raising the rents a scooch, I've actually increased my income, my potential income from my property, almost $11,000. That's substantial. The next thing again, I have to include the vacancy. In this area right now we have a 3% vacancy. That's according to this. So we're going to lose $3,764. And then we're going to add in the laundry. The laundry is the laundry of the extra laundry of $2,400 to give me a effective gross income. The income coming into the property of $124.96. So again, I went from my total income of $113,720 to $124.96.
How did you do that again?
Just by raising the rents a little bit.
And the laundry.
And in the laundry. So the change in my rents was from $520 to $575. So I went up 55 on one apartment and $610 to $660. $50. Not that much. But it's now giving me
What is that at 2,400?
Oh, the laundry room. Laundry facility. But just raising those rents, $50 a month, again, increased my annual income close to $11,000. Everyone sign the sheet. So these are things I have to factor in because, again, we're talking money here. Now I have to look at my expenses. Again, unfortunately, real estate taxes, insurance, those are my hard costs. I have to pay those. But I got rid of the owner's salary. I got rid of the health insurance. And I trimmed some of the other fat on the expenses. So now I have my total expenses equal to $73,000 $406. A difference from $109,000 of close to $35,000. Is that a substantial difference?
What did you do?
You
on that?
betcha.
What you did? What did you do?
I took out things like the owner's salary,
Right.
the health insurance. I checked some of my other expenses. For instance, maybe I was paying too high on my heating oil, right? So I switched the company and I saved a couple dollars. So again, we have to check these things when we're taking over a new building. So now, my new income, or my new net operating income, is now $50,690. Do I have a deal now?
Yeah.
Oh yes, right? There's a big difference from earning $4,658 a year to $50,000 a year. If you could buy a property like this, how many of these do you need to own to feel comfortable? 10. Exactly, I agree with you. 500.
Yeah, 500.
Yep.
It says they end up taking off the owner's salary.
Yep. So remember, the owner had an owner's salary of $20,000. So did I need that? Again, if I'm making money, I don't need that salary. So I give it back to the building. So again, now it's still money coming into my pocket, but it's improving my bottom line. All right? It's, again, increasing that net operating income. Now, I decide here that, do I want to pay cash for the building? Nah. I decide might as well use other people's money. And what happens is, what I do is I'm going to buy this property, purchase price is $500,000. Okay? I'm going to put a down payment equal to $100,000, and I'm going to finance $400,000 at 7% for 31 years, and the annual debt on that, what I have to pay on my mortgage, is $31,934, and which leaves me $18,756. Now, we go back to our cash on cash, which is money I made, which is $18,756 divided by money I spent. How much did I spend on this building? 100,000. So now I divide it by 100,000, which equals 0.8756, which equals approximately 18.76%. So that means for my $100,000, I am making 18% return on my money. Is that a good deal?
Yes.
Most definitely. Anytime you start making double digits in real estate, that's a very, very good thing. All right? And especially when we're starting to approach 20%. That's a keeper. All right? So we have to look at these things and play with these numbers, guys, to make sure this fits our investment strategy. If it does, boom. No worries, no problem. So again, I like deals like this. Now, $18,756. That's how much I made. Do I get to keep all that money? No. Why? Taxes. Remember our uncle. We have to take care of our uncle. Uncle Sam, right? So, in this regards here, we've now made this $18,756. Now, let's say we're in an average tax bracket of 30%. So, just hit the calculator. A second. Get my calculator. Hold on. There we go. So we're at 18,756 times 30%. 18,756.
after 30 years.
So I have to give my uncle $5,626.80 every year. So that means I'm getting to keep 18,756 minus 5626.8. I'm keeping 13,132.20 a year on my property. Is it still a good deal? Yeah, I'm making 13%. Do I like that? I like it, but what do I like better? I like that 18%, right? 13% is good. 18%, a lot better. Now, this is where we have to look at certain things. And this is where a very important part of real estate investing comes into play. Now, what I'm going to tell you is purely legal right now. I'm not telling you certain things that you're going to go to jail for, or certain things that are not allowed, or you have to open an offshore account in some foreign country to hide the money or anything of that nature. With investment properties, the IRS allows us to do what's called depreciation. Okay? Now, depreciation by definition can be thought of as a loss of value of a property over time during which it's expected to be useful. When considering investment property, depreciation may be determined for tax purposes only. It's not a true reflection of the property's value. Okay? And the IRS allows an accounting deduction that reflects the economic fact that buildings do depreciate. Now, in real estate, we have two important ones. For what we call a residential investment, it is 27.5 years. And for a commercial investment, it is 39 years. Now, the IRS, these are slight.
For residential is 27.5 years, and what is it for
39. 39 for commercial. Now, this is where the IRS gets slightly different with the rest of us in real estate and how they determine a residential investment and a commercial investment. Now, normally when we refer to a residential property, it's a 1 to 4 family, co-op or condo, right? How the IRS views a residential investment is any investment that only has residential components. So for instance, if I have a 500 unit apartment building and there are just apartments, that's considered a residential investment in the eyes of the IRS.
Yeah, what?
A 500 unit apartment building with just apartments, the IRS considers it a residential investment property because there's only apartments. However, if I now have those 500 units and a supermarket on the first floor, it's now considered a mixed-use building because we're mixing things together, and now the IRS considers it a commercial investment property. So if it's just apartments, they consider it residential. Throw anything else into the mix, or an office building, a hotel like this, it's all commercial. So, what do we do? Well, the first thing is we have to look at the property that is being depreciated. And this is an important thing where we have an important document called that appraisal. Because what we are allowed to depreciate is the improvements on the lot. In other words, all this stuff, the bricks, the sticks, the mortar, how much the building itself is physically worth. not including the land. So what I have to do is I have to look at the appraisal. I know what I bought my building for. In the appraisal, he's going to tell me the value of my lot. And what I have to do is take my purchase price minus the lot value, gives me my depreciable asset. So in this case, we bought the property for $500, and the lot, so the purchase price is $500, the lot is worth $100,000. So that means my depreciable asset equals $400,000. Okay? I now take my $400,000 and I divide it by 27 and a half years to get my annual depreciation of $14,546. So,
let me see if I understand. You took the lot value.
yep, the purchase price, how much I bought the property for,
Purchase
price, minus the lot value,
minus lot value.
gives me my depreciable asset. I then divide that by, since this is a residential investment, the 27 and a half years. If it was a commercial property, I would divide it by the 39, all right? So, I come up with the 500, my purchase price, minus the 100 for the lot value, gives me 400. I then divide it by the 27 and a half. I'm now left with 14,546 of depreciation to be used for the next 27 and a half years. So how do I use it?
No, that only applies to when you're investing in a
Correct.
residential property.
Correct.
That has nothing to do with your
Nope,
property.
nothing to do with your primary. Nope, unfortunately. So what do I do with this 14,546? Mm-hmm.
That's the value you get every year annually, or that's what you use?
Annually. That's what I use to offset my taxes.
So that's not the amount you use for 27 years.
Oh yeah, this amount, the 1456, for the next 27 years,
Mhm.
annually. So how I use this, remember, here's my income of 18,756. So my accountant gives me a nice slap on the back and says, John, you did good. Because this is what he does. He takes my 18,756 and he minuses the 14,546 from it. So my new adjusted income, 18,750 minus 14,546 equals $4,204. And now I have to pay what?
Taxes.
Income tax. So now I pay my 30%
And 4,000.
of 4204 times 0.3, $1,261 and 20 cents. And I happily write that check to the IRS.
And your building did not actually depreciate.
No, my
It did
building has not decreased in
not.
value.
That's right.
No. So, now how much money have I made? Well, I haven't made my 18% because I had to give 1261 away, but still, I made pretty good. Do we like depreciation?
Oh, yeah.
You betcha. Anything that helps me keep money
Money.
in my pocket is a good thing. Yep,
So, in the eyes of an investor,
yep,
it's better to be able to depreciate more every year.
yes it is.
Opposed to less.
Well, actually, what do I want this 14,000 to really become? Even better, 19. Because again, if my depreciation is 19,000, I made 18,750. 18,750 minus 19, what am I left with? 250, but what kind of 250? Negative. I'm in the red. Oh no, this is terrible. I'm losing my shirt. How much taxes do I pay on negative income? 0.
That's right.
That's why investors love depreciation. They try to look to find depreciation to pretty much wash out the income. Because if I have 0 or negative, do I pay income tax?
No.
No. Mm-hmm.
So
Which we
when you
maintain
have like
that.
a commercial component,
Yep.
supermarket or stores,
Yep.
on the ground level of an apartment building,
Yep.
they're really lowering the amount they're able to depreciate.
Correct. But
Then it
remember,
becomes a,
it compounds. Depending on what you're doing, the income and everything like that, you still may be able to get away with 0.
So commercial is 27.5 years or 39?
39. Commercial is 39. So again, this is what I as an investor want to try to do. Because I want to keep how much in my pocket?
The most possible.
The most possible. And if it's all, it's even better. All right? So again, this is why investors look especially to real estate, guys, because you can only do this in real estate. I mean, I've known investors that have left buildings vacant just to take depreciation off of that property and offset certain income streams. So again, this is a very huge tool that investors use. Now, unfortunately, what the government giveth, the government taketh away. All right. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, they will let you take this 14,546 as long as you own the building. What happens when I sell the building? Well, something called recapture. So, let's move this. Now, what happens? This is what happens. Let's say I have my building for 500,000, 10 years goes by. And do we hope the building has appreciated in value over 10 years? Yeah. All right, so let's say it's now went up, and just for argument's sake, let's say it's worth $750, okay? And I decide to sell it. If I sell an investment property, what do I have to pay?
That's it.
Well, what specific kind of tax? Someone said.
Capital
Capital gains tax. Now, what capital gains tax is money I make over my original investment. So, my original purchase price, remember, was $500. So, I take the $750, I minus my $500, and my capital gains on this property is $250,000. Are we done? No. Because over the last 10 years, I've taken 14,546 in depreciation. The government says, well, we gave that to you. Guess what? We want it back. So now they take the 14,546, multiply it by 10. So they now add to the 250, 1,445, 460.
Why do you have to multiply by 10?
Because I've taken it 10 years down the road. So I've taken my depreciation for the last 10 years.
Isn't there a cap of how much I forgot the word.
No.
No, with this, isn't there a cap where you'll have to make a certain amount of money?
Well, there are
before you
certain
pay?
things that can come into play and stuff like that, yes. There are certain things. But I'm just using this for the example.
Okay.
So now, instead of just paying on the 250, I have to pay on the whole amount of 395, 460. So what does that mean? How much tax am I paying, more or less?
More.
I'm More. Do I like paying tax?
No.
No. Now, there are two ways I can get away with not paying tax. Don't worry, we're not going to jail for
That's
this.
a new property.
Now, huh?
Should you roll it in before?
There are two ways I can get away with not paying the tax on this, the capital gains tax. One is really easy. Very simple way I can avoid paying capital gains tax. You know how that is? I die.
Oh my goodness.
If I'm dead, do I have to pay tax?
No.
Knock on wood, guys, the government has yet to figure that one out, okay? So if I die, what happens to my property? Who gets it? My heirs. My heirs inherit it, and what do they have to pay? Inheritance tax, right? So it's a whole different tax. But do I want to die after I own my property for only 10 years?
No.
No. So the IRS has come to our aid, and there is a fun thing we are allowed to do. And this is what we call a 1031 exchange. Okay? What it says is that I'm allowed to roll in the money that would have been paid for the capital gains to a new investment. All right? The only thing
Exchange is what happens?
is all the money I would have had to pay in taxes, I roll it or use it to buy a new investment
You
property.
have to pay taxes.
And then I don't have to pay taxes
To pay taxes, you invest it,
in a new property. There is a certain caveat. It has to be what they call a like exchange. So in other words, with real estate, it kind of gets a little broad.
like exchange?
Like. Which means, if I have an investment property that I am selling, I must buy another investment property. So, I can't sell my apartment building here and go buy a house in the Hamptons, a retirement home for me, and use that. Can't do it. So I have to buy it. I can sell my apartment building, which is an investment property. I could buy an office building, which is an investment property. It's a like. That's where with real estate it gets a little different. As long as it's investment for investment, we're good to go. Now, 1031s, like for equipment and even livestock, it gets very specific. So like with aircraft, if you sell aircraft, you have to buy aircraft, things like that. With livestock, it gets particular in gender. So let's say I have a bunch of bulls that I sell off. I can buy colts, like male horses. I can't buy female horses or cows. It's got to be gender for gender, believe it or not. That's how crazy the 1031s are with different things. But with real estate, if it's investment property for another investment property, we're good to go. Unfortunately, does it make the tax disappear? No. In reality, what we're doing is deferring this capital gains tax. We're kicking it down the road a little bit to some future point in time. When I decide to finally liquidate all my real estate, unfortunately, then I have to pay the taxes. Or, of course, that easy way to get out of everything, I die. Then my heirs have to deal with the tax burdens and things of that nature. Exactly. We have to, that's when, unfortunately, if we're getting old enough and, of course, frail enough, and we own a lot of stuff, we have to start doing what they call estate planning. Because believe it or not, there are certain insurance mechanisms and things like that we can deal with that would pay off the tax burden for our heirs. But again, that's something we have to look at and understand. But this truly, guys, is the key for investing. Now, I'm going to take it a little further, one step further. So, let's go back in the future. to our 10 years down the road, $750,000 value on our property. Now, remember, I took out mortgage financing, $400,000. Now, I've been paying down the mortgage for over 10 years, right? And let's say today the balance is, well, let's say $325. So that's my current balance of my mortgage. Now, what I do is I walk into my bank, sit down with my banker and say, look, I own my building, it's worth $750. How much financing are you willing to give me to refinance my property? And this is where it gets real fun. Because we look at $750 and he says, I'll give you 70% financing. So he now gives me a new loan of $525 based on 70% loan to value. Well, I have to pay off my $325, right? All right. So I minus my $325, and I'm left with $200,000. Now, remember, unfortunately, do we finance for free?
No.
No. There's some closing costs and things of that nature.
What happened was $750, what did you do?
I paid off my old mortgage. So my old mortgage is now paid off, left with
How do you
two.
get the 525?
Oh, 750 times 70% loan to value. So, I now have 200, let's minus out $30,000 in closing costs. So I have a net check of $170,000, right? Now, let me ask you a question. How much did I originally invest in my property? 100,000. So I give myself back $100,000, and I still walk away with
How'd you get a
70,000.
30K? How'd you get a 30K?
Huh? Oh, I just made that up.
That's
Oh.
That's closing costs. Closing costs. I just made that up. I pulled that. So now,
It's about accurate.
that's about it.
Depending on,
This is my original investment of $100,000, and I put $70,000 in my pocket. Now this is where it gets really good. Let's go back to that cash on cash equation. And remember, cash on cash is cash made versus cash invested. Now, let's just say for argument's sake, my cash that I'm making stayed the same. So how much is that? $18,756, right? Now, how much do I have invested in my property? No. Remember, I had $100,000. What do I do by refinancing?
took it out.
I paid myself back.
Right.
So how much do I have invested in my property?
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero. So now I have 18,756 divided by 0. You guys know what that equals? No. 18,756. Any number you divide by 0 gives me an infinite return. Think about
Say that again.
any number divided by 0 gives me an infinite return. Think about it like this. Has this ever happened to you? You're walking down the sidewalk. All of a sudden you see something kind of
Give
flittering.
you what return?
Infinite.
Infinite?
Infinite.
Infinite.
You're walking down the street on the sidewalk and you see something fluttering in front of you. You start walking closer to it and you notice it looks like paper. Matter of fact, it looks like green paper. And as you get closer and closer, you see it's a $20 bill just laying there on the sidewalk. What do?
You take it.
Well, before you take it, you do one of these, right? You look around, see if anyone's watching, and usually without even breaking stride, you do like one of these limbo maneuvers, swing down and pick that $20 bill up. How do you feel?
$20 richer.
You feel, thank you, right? That was a gift from heaven. Well, that's what this is, guys. Because now, my building is making me money
That's right.
without it costing me money. I've taken, how many of you go to the casinos? How many of you have ever been to the casinos? All right, a few. All right. Every now and then, there's the bankers and real estate conventions down in Atlantic City. And me personally, I like to play craps, dice. This is how I play. I know the odds are stacked against me. I'm not a big bettor or anything like that. I take the amount of money that I am willing to lose, $100. Lay it on the table, get my chips. Put them on the rack, and I start playing. If I start doing good, I take 2 chips off, put them in my pocket. Keep playing good, another 2 chips in my pocket, so forth and so on. And my goal, my strategy, is to put my $100 back in my pocket. Because if I now have $100 in my pocket and a stack of chips on the table, whose money am I playing with?
House money.
House money. Do I care? At that point, no, I'm playing for free. I might as well have a good time. And if I win more, I'm even happier, right?
Icing on the cake.
But again, that's icing on the cake, go on. But this is the goal that real estate investors have. To get it to the point where I can take my money off the table, so to speak, and let the property deal with itself, pay with itself. Yes?
Wouldn't you have less equity in the property though?
Not really. Because what am I really mostly concerned with an investment property? The income. Because I still have equity in the property. Even at a 525 loan, I still have $225,000 worth of equity.
So you don't own the whole entire property?
Well, no, I own the whole property. I just have a mortgage on it.
All right.
Now, I'm going to take it another step further. Who's paying the mortgage?
Hopefully the rent.
Tenants.
The tenants. So I have a building now that I bought for no money out of my pocket now, and that my tenants are now paying my expenses.
You making money.
And I'm taking money off the table. All right? This is why, guys, people look at investment properties, which truthfully is another reason I like that this is the last chapter, because this really hones in what real estate is really about. Honestly. I mean, you guys are just starting your careers and everything. But honestly, you should look at becoming real estate investors as well. Because this is the vehicle to wealth. More multimillionaires have been made in the world, and I'm not talking just this country, the entire world, through real estate, than any other type of investment vehicle. And there's possibilities for even normal people, regular people, to find property, invest in it, and over a period of years, have a nice return. Especially, some of you guys are younger, so again, something to think about as if you want to retire by the time you're 45, 50. How many of these properties again, if I'm taking $18,000 a year, or let's round it up, let's call it 20. How many of these properties do I have to own before I feel comfortable? If I had, let's say it's 20, if I have 10 of these properties, that's $200,000 you're making a year. Would you feel comfortable? Sure. And this is why people aim for real estate. Because they realize, and on top of it, remember, what investors do is as these properties appreciate, they get more valuable, what do? They refinance and buy another one.
That's right.
Or they might sell this property now that it's worth $750, and what are they gonna buy?
Another.
Bigger and better.
They don't want-
Because now they sell, they pay off the, let's say we sold this at $750, we have the $350. Again, we now have this extra money, we can now roll into a bigger and better property. And remember, if it's bigger and better, what does that mean about the income?
More income.
More income, it's bigger, it's better. So again, a lot of investors start out small, you know, they may not have huge war chests, what we call, to buy property. But what they do, they invest in a small property, let it grow, let it appreciate, sell it, then go buy another one. Let that one build. Sell it, go to the next, and before you know it, you now have a nice investment portfolio. That's why the other reason I love this chapter. You know, a few years ago I got into investing myself, and honestly, I would never stop. Because I see the benefit of it. There's no question about it. And a lot of individuals out there would agree with me. They really would. You know, look at all the investors you have in Manhattan, with all the huge buildings and everything that's going on. Again, that's a different stratosphere because we're talking, you know, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars being invested. But again, do those people who invest hundreds of millions of dollars, do they start with hundreds of millions of dollars?
No.
Not really, you know. I mean, a lot of people have started with small beginnings and through real estate have built themselves up. You know, even, you know, if you look at some of the quote unquote gurus, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or even, the motivational guy,
Anthony Robbins?
Anthony Robbins, thank you very much. Anthony Robbins said he was dirt poor. He was living on someone's couch or in his car or something, I forget the story. And how he attained wealth was through real estate. He became a real estate agent out in California, I think, if I remember correctly. So these things are important. So you guys are in the right place, all right? So think about it, you know, it's a good place to be, and you'll have long, lucrative, and most importantly, exciting and profitable careers. All right? All right, guys, any questions or anything? Nope.
If you, suppose now I have a one family house,
Mm-hmm.
and I sell the one family, buy a 3-family house. If I'm living here in the 3-family, it's still an investment property.
No, it's still your own.
It's still your own